Is it metagaming to know your own class in D&D? It's a strange question that came up recently because some of my players didn't know how to introduce themselves. Allow me to explain with a story. You wander into a nearby village. The village elder greets you, and you introduce yourself as a wizard studying at the nearby academy. You introduced yourself as a wizard, the class, because wizards have implications within the world. They study their magic and use spellbooks, which makes them wizards, kind of like how a bard plays instruments and tells stories. But would a fighter really introduce themselves as a fighter? Or an artificer as an artificer instead of a blacksmith or a tinkerer? This made me wonder. The divisions between the classes need to be there for mechanical reasons. It's what keeps the game a game with rules and guidelines. But in the setting, what do the divisions mean? To figure this out, let's look at the list of the 13 classes. First, I'm going to take away wizards. A wizard is a profession, and you would introduce yourself as such. Clerics are in a similar boat. It's their profession. I would also assume sorcerers and even warlocks would introduce themselves like that because there's a clear division between them and wizards. Also, monks are those who study in monasteries and harness ki, so I'd say they're pretty specialized and able to differentiate themselves from other names. Onto the three shaky ones. Bards that solely focus on music or poetry would probably introduce themselves as a bard, but they can hold other roles like jester or dancer. Druids are the same. I feel as if most druids would say something like, I'm a hermit, or I'm a wanderer in tune with nature, and they have a lot in common narratively with the sorcerer because it's just someone with magic that can use it without a book or a patron. And then artificers. Maybe an artificer would introduce himself as such, but it's much more likely that they would be a blacksmith or an engineer or a tinkerer. Onto our weird part with the misfit classes: rogue, fighter, barbarian, paladin, ranger. I guess you can say, yeah, I'm a fighter, but adventurer or thief or knight or explorer are probably better identities. I mean, imagine walking up to someone and introducing yourself as barbarian, or better yet, when a village is raided by barbarians, I hardly imagine all of them are running around with rage and D12 hit dice. Once I really thought about this, it helped me blur the lines between the classes. In my current campaign that I DM, I have an evocation wizard named Azaki and an Eldritch Knight fighter named William. And in-game, Azaki is teaching William how to use magic, which is narratively why he's able to. While playing the fighter class, William is technically a wizard in training. And although he has 0 levels in wizard, he could introduce himself in a social interaction as a practicing wizard or an apprentice. I encourage you to go through the list of classes and break them down mechanically and rebuild them in a way that makes sense to you in terms of your story. I still think that barbarians could pass off as sorcerers, especially in the context of the new wild magic barbarian. I have a lot of unique opinions about barbarians, but I think that's better suited for another video. Getting back on topic, this has really restructured the way that I view some of the subclasses that are available. I already mentioned Eldritch Knight, but most melee classes get a magic subclass, and that's really informed my opinion on how I view magic in my world. Eldritch Knights and Arcane Tricksters can be wizards in training, or those who are just discovering their innate magic. I think there's great overlap between those who can introduce themselves as knights. Within the fighter subclasses, we have Cavalier and Banneret. Paladins have Oath of the Ancients and Oath of the Crown, so there's plenty of opportunities for you to become a knight. I'm sure if a character wanted to be an apothecary, they could be an alchemist artificer or one of the druid subclasses, or a cleric of life. There's so many options once I broke this down for myself, but at its core, this allows your setting to be more immersive, having classes that aren't tied to certain professions and vice versa. Drop the idea of classes in-game, rebuild what you would call them in a conversation, and the game flows much nicer. Let me know some of the ideas that you have down in the comments. I would love to interact with those. As always, thanks for watching. We release themed homebrew packs bi-weekly on Patreon and YouTube videos every week. If you like the video, please hit subscribe or like because it really helps us in these early days. Thank you very much.